Welcome to the Principles of Mobile Marketing. Session 6 is all about integrating mobile into your marketing campaign. One of the key things about mobile, one of the key things about any channel, I guess, is that nothing sits on its own. And we're seeing a lot more activity where mobile is integrated into other channels. We already know about two-screening. We talked about in the mobile landscape, the first session, we talked about how people are watching television, but at the same time they're using their mobile devices. And what we're finding is that up to 80% of smartphone owners are actually using their devices whilst interacting with television. So that's over half of the UK audience are actually, they're not just sitting there watching the television, they're actually using their smartphones to interact. But it's not just television, it's everything else as well. They do it whilst they're reading music, even on the internet. So people are on their PCs, their laptops, actually browsing the internet, but at the same time, many of them are using their mobile devices. And similarly, reading books, magazines, playing games. Mobile is part of all of those activities now. And it's really important that brands understand that interaction and actually work across all of the media channels. I guess the thing to say here is that in the end, mobile means that all advertising can be two-way. In session 5 on proximity, we talked about how you could use things like QR and NFC to get interaction. But there are other channels as well. So it doesn't really matter whether it's television advertising, OOH, print, whatever you're doing, mobile can be there. And more often than not, it's mobile first. What is the first thing people are going to do when they see your advert now? It's going to be picking up their mobile device and interacting with you. So it's essential that brands start to think about how mobile can be integrated into all of those channels. SMS is a really important response mechanism. Although we've talked a lot about things like web, and apps, and SMS, and QR, and some of the emerging channels like NFC, SMS is still the fundamental response tool. Why? Because essentially it's the thing that anybody can use. It doesn't matter if you haven't got a data connection. It doesn't even matter if you've got low battery life or you've just got one bar of reception on your phone. You can text. And that's great, because everybody knows how to do it. So it's been used for many, many years. And the kind of things it's been used for are text for a sample, you can get a brochure sent to your phone, you can deliver mobile links, but also things like callback requests as well. So text to call can be very, very effective. If you imagine in certain situations, people don't want to call. If you call a free phone number, an 0800 number, you often hear one of those messages that says, this is going to cost you a lot of money. Now, in certain audiences, particularly older audiences, they're very reluctant to continue that call. Whereas if you ask them to text, they will do that and they will get a call back. And the other thing about mobile is that it works. With the DMA and the IAB, we did a study in 2010 about mobile messaging. We worked with Marks and Spencers, who have a very successful mobile messaging channel, and tested how it worked. And here were the results. First thing is that 74% of people said they would opt in for the right incentive. What's that incentive? Well, generally speaking, we're talking about offers and discounts. And it's really important that for any mobile channel, but particularly something like messaging, that you do incentivize the user. But similarly, a lot of people express concerns about costs and spam. So in the first session on the mobile landscape, we talked about the personalness of the device. And it's important to remember that this is a very personal, private channel. So you need to be clear with people about exactly what you're going to send them, how often you're going to send it, and what the costs are, if any. It's important that brands gain trust before they bring people into any mobile channel, but particularly messaging. 41% would opt in where they had control, and this is really important. Very often brands assume that if you're going to opt in, you've opted in for everything, you can continue sending your information until they tell you to stop. But the best way to do it is to ask people exactly what they want, and maybe even when they want it. So for example, my bank sends me a text every week about my statements. I have a mini statement that arrives on my phone, and I can decide what time of day I get that, which day of the week it arrives. Not only that, but I can set up other alerts for specific events. So for example, if a balance drops below a certain amount or I receive a particular payment, it will tell me by SMS. Marks and Spencers do the same. So when you sign up, you can decide exactly what things you're interested in. So I might be interested in their dine-in for a tenner, but I don't want to know about their women's shoes. So I will sign up for those things, and they will only send me offers that are relevant to me. When you do that, a very interesting thing happens, which is that people remember SMS. So again, we sent people a message. We then spoke to them the next day and said, did you remember getting the message, and do you remember what it was? 98% of people remembered both the SMS and the MMS and what that content was. And the reason is that mobile is that personal channel, and we read messages almost immediately. Even with brand messages, a vast majority of them are read within 1 hour. So it's a really great way to get people's attention. Now, the thing to remember is there is a flip side to this as well, is if you don't get it right, people will also remember it. So good or bad, they're going to remember you. So it's important to understand that engagement and get it absolutely right. Finally, one interesting thing that came out of this study was how much people liked MMS. And I think that MMS is an often overlooked channel in mobile, and it has lots of potential. For starters, people like a picture. It's nice, it's interactive. In a typical MMS message, a picture message, you can send 3 GIFs, 3 images. You can also send 160 characters of text. So there's a lot of content that you can get into a single MMS, and that appeals to people. But the other reason why people liked an MMS was this, is it showed brand trust. So a text message that looked like, or a picture message that looked like it was from Marks and Spencers, rather than a somewhat kind of unbranded, anonymous-looking text message, was far more successful. Don't forget about the importance of email. We're seeing more and more smartphone users actually accessing email through their devices. So 76% of smartphone owners access their emails through their devices. And yet brands often overlook the need to optimize it. We know that if you don't optimize it, that they are less likely to open it. And one of the problems is, of course, is that email behaves very differently on a mobile device than on desktop. So it's not just about screen sizes. Most email clients and smartphones, for example, don't automatically load images. Yet think of how many brand emails rely on image loading in order for them to be usable and to make sense. And similarly, brands often use things like the mouse hover as a way of providing more information, a description of a picture, or what that link is. Well, you don't have hover mechanism on a touch screen, so how can you find out what that is? So you need to build all of that in. But a really interesting thing happens is that when you optimize it, you get really good results. And this mirrors the same kind of thing that we're seeing with the mobile internet. So British Airways did something interesting. They wanted to create an email campaign for their BA Executive Club app. So what they did is they looked historically at who had been opening their emails on their devices. And based on that, they sent an email that was optimized for each particular handset. Now, with Android and iPhone, they saw opening rates of over 50%. Now, for any brand email campaign, that's a really good that's a really good opening rate. Similarly, they saw click-through rates of from 25% upwards, and even 30% for BlackBerries. And as a result, they had a lot of downloads for their apps. But you could have actually done something even more than British Airways. They looked historically at what people have been using, but it's actually possible to identify the email client, and as the email is being opened, you can deliver an optimized CSS for that particular handset, and so people will get the best experience. It's actually not very hard to do, and yet it's something that brands can do to gain a lot more engagement through mobile. In session 3, in the ad formats, we talked about the importance of search. And it's just, really to emphasize how much search is growing, that 55% of smartphone users are now using the mobile web on a regular basis. And what's interesting, 81% have searched for local providers. So local is really important with mobile search, much more so than desktop. 80% have taken direct action on finding someone, and 68% of people use mobile use mobile websites and mobile search in store. So, for example, if you're in retail, what you have to remember now is that your customers are actually standing in your store and they're actually able to search and they're able to find out if your competitor has the product for cheaper, or if they have a better product, or if they have availability for stock items that you don't. And all of this is beginning to change the face of retail and the way that we do things. As soon as everyone is armed with a smartphone, we've reached that tipping point and everything starts to change. Visual search is something that's quite interesting, and it hasn't really taken off, but I think it has a lot of potential for brands who could be doing something much more interesting. And the main visual search is something called Google Goggles. So essentially the idea is you take a picture of something and Google will recognize that image and produce a search accordingly. What's interesting about that, it isn't just for places or historic places or anything like that, it also works with brand logos. And it works with branded items, so things like your classic Coca-Cola bottle, for example, it will actually be able to search and show a set of shopping results. Now, if I was a brand that was using products, I would make sure that those products' images are optimized within Google, because people are using that search and they are looking for them. One of the other areas that's become interesting and has grown in the last few years is AR, or augmented reality. At the simplest level, it just simply allows the camera's phone to open up the advert and to take you into a new kind of form of reality. You can embed other information and things like that. Typically, it's things like playing a video over the top, but there's been augmented reality games where you can shoot at helicopters flying around the rooms. And it's a great form of interaction. There's a great example from the London Museum, for example, who did a augmented reality campaign where you pointed your camera at well-known places in London, say Piccadilly Circus, and it would overlay a historic image of that. And there's even an app where you can go around London to different places, and it will overlay scenes from films that were shot in that place. And that's a really nice piece of interaction for brands. But one of the ways it's moving is with the combination of image recognition, so it's kind of like your image search and augmented reality together. And it's a kind of step on from QR. So imagine with QR you scan the code. With the image recognition and augmented reality get together, what you're able to do is to scan a product and it will show you more information. So for example, here is something that was done for Cadbury's and dairy milk. So now let's look at some examples of augmented reality and image response in action. What I'm doing here is I'm using an image response augmented reality app called Blipper. Now this is for Heinz ketchup, and all I have to do is to simply, as I hold it in front of the ketchup bottle, or in this case a picture of the bottle, as you can see it brings up a recipe book. So we can look through the recipe book, Heinz lasagna, and if I want I can then see a video of the recipe, which is a really nice piece of engagement.
Hi, I'm Nadia Swala, and I'm going to be showing you how to cook a really yummy family dish using a rather special...
All right, brilliant. So this is another really clever example of image recognition or augmented reality. In this case, it was done in Spain for the Fiat Evo. And the idea here was that essentially what they did was to hijack road signs. So it was a specific app called Street Evo app, and all you had to do was simply to point it towards road signs and then just scan it. And look, I've pointed this towards the stop sign here, and it now gives me the information about the vehicle. So in this case, it's telling me about the steering and about how the headlights adjust. And this is really clever because effectively it's a form of guerrilla marketing. Imagine you could capture almost any kind of sign or image or poster and put your brand and your information on top of it. And I think, although this is never going to appeal to everyone, I think there's a lot of exciting engagement possible with this image recognition system. A couple more examples of image recognition response. One comes from Weetabix, who are using it on pack. So again, you can actually get integration and interactivity not just through things like road signs or posters, but actually on the packs themselves. Another really interesting example was Net-a-Porter, the fashion site. And what they did is they created something called the window shop, and it was this virtual shop window. They did one in London and one in New York. And there they had images of clothing in posters in the window. And when you held up your iPad or iPhone, it would scan that image and it would then show you a video of models actually wearing that clothing and part of an outfit. What was interesting about that campaign is they only ran it in each country for 1 or 2 days, but on each day they were getting about 2,000 scans, which is pretty good going. But for them, the best thing they got from that campaign was a lot of PR, and they got a lot of coverage from it on all the digital press, but also some of the mainstream press. So sometimes being early into something, being the first to think up a particular campaign, can be of enormous benefit in terms of your brand PR. But it's not just about pictures. The other thing you can do, of course, is to use sound. And I think there's a lot of potential offered in sound tracking, audio tagging for brands to do that. The first time I saw this was when the band Faithless were doing a series of gigs, and for their television advertising, there was a little logo for Shazam, the sound tagging software. If you tagged that advert, it took you straight to the concert ticket buying page. Someone else who did it was Take That when they brought out their last album. What would happen is if you tagged their single, it would first of all enter you into a competition to win tickets for their concerts. But the other thing is that when the album came out, they would send a push alert to tell you about that. So now it's not just bands, but other brands have started to pick up on it. And Honda Jazz, for example, have done it. There was also a campaign done using Shazam for Grey's Anatomy in the US. And Shazam are working very closely now with advertisers, allowing people to tag adverts. Shazam is a very familiar app. Many, many people use it. And it's not as complicated or as difficult to use as, for example, QR or something like that. So I think for many brands, they should actually look at the opportunities available from audio tagging, because there are some real possibilities there. We talked in section 4 in optimization strategies about the potential of social media, and actually using social as response mechanism offers some real opportunities for mobile engagement. And a lot of it is particularly around Twitter and hashtagging. We've seen it a lot in television. They now even call it hashtag TV, but you can also do it with posters and things like that. And getting people to just tweet about your brand, to like about your brand, can get you a lot of coverage in social media. The other great thing about it is that it actually helps support your SEO activities. So, for example, if you've got an SEO campaign going on, Google will include certain social media authorities, so Twitter and Facebook likes, to improve your page ranking. Now, one of the quickest ways to get that is to actually do a social media response campaign through mobile. So you do an advert, outdoor or television, and get people to actually respond to it there and then. You can get a lot of likes, you can get a lot of tweets very, very quickly, and that helps improve your authority in the search engine rankings. We talked in session 1 about how apps can help brands, but with over 500,000 apps in iTunes and nearly the same number in Android's market, how on earth do people find it? And even if you're the biggest brand out there, people are not necessarily going to download your app unless you promote it. There are a couple of ways. There are quite a few ways that you can do it. One of them is to use your existing advertising campaigns. You can use above-the-line media, so people like Barclaycard with their water slide game used their television advertising to promote that. Similarly, British Gas have done it with their app. But it doesn't just have to be that. There are other methods. So NatWest have used SMS as part of O2 More's channel in order to promote their app. One of the other techniques you can use is app seeding. And the idea behind app seeding is to get enough user reviews, enough good star ratings, in order to move yourself up the App Store rankings, the top 100, in order to get more downloads. There's a kind of critical mass that once you get above 100, you can actually get a serious amount of downloads. But when you're outside the top 100, the downloads are very low. So you try and actually get enough reviews, and people have been using things like PR companies and so on to actually build those reviews in order to bring you up the App Store and actually start to get those downloads. And then outside of that, you've got the obvious kind of pay-per-click. So you've got Google and also iAd for developers. But it's important that if you're going to have an app, it's not just going to sit there in the App Store. People are actually going to download and use it. The other thing you can do, it's not just about integrating campaigns, it's about integrating content. A very interesting ad for AXA in Belgium was one of the early iAd ones they did, which combined with newspaper advertising. So the idea is that you opened up the app, you placed it on top of a really nice gap in the newspaper, and the ad showed some crack in the street. And it said, if you want to know why there was a crack in the street, place your camera over here. And what happened was a giant kind of Godzilla-type creature came stomping along and you saw the crack in the street. And it was essentially to promote their car insurance. Similarly, Mercedes in South Africa used mobile to illustrate the power of their vehicle. And we're going to watch that video right now. So we've already talked about the importance of mobile in retail, and the point here is that essentially many of us are now carrying smartphones around, specifically so that we can actually compare purchases. And according to Google, 21% of people have actually changed their mind about a purchase in store because of information they've discovered on their smartphone. So it's really important that retailers actually capitalise on this. First and foremost, you need to give them a mobile destination, particularly a mobile site. They're browsing, they're looking, make sure that you are the one who is there with your mobile optimized device, with your mobile optimized site. People like Debenhams, for example, have used barcodes as part of their in-store experience to allow people to scan and get more information. And increasingly, this is the way that it's going with retailers. So retail is much more about things like showroom and getting information than necessarily just going into the store and buying. It's really important, for example, that you actually incentivize all of these things. So once again, it's about delivering vouchers that people can redeem, and it's really important that the users feel that they get some benefit from engaging with you through their mobile device. One of the things that we can actually see from something like Barclaycard water slide is it's a great way to amplify the brand. So it's not just what they see on the television advertising, but it's a way of just going beyond that and continuing that user engagement. But also mobile is about CRM as much as anything else. One of my favourite ever campaigns is probably Orange Wednesdays, just because it kind of ticks all the boxes about how a campaign should be done. So Orange Wednesdays has been going just over 5 years, and in that time they've had over 14 million scans and saved their customers over £30 million. So how does it work? Well, it's really simple. So you just simply text 2 for 1, very easy, to their short code number, and you get a free cinema ticket. So the concept is easy. It's any Orange customer, any mate, any Wednesday, 1 free cinema ticket. They don't complicate it. They don't say, well, we'll do any Wednesday as long as it isn't too busy and it's Christmas time. You can't do your friend if they're on O2 and so on. It's anyone. It's universal. The other thing, of course, is redeemed on the phone. So you text it, the voucher comes back, you go to the cinema, and you get your free ticket there and then. There's no printing out, there's no messing around. People have actually joined Orange specifically because they want that cinema ticket. Now what's really interesting is they picked Wednesdays because that was the quietest day for cinema going. But what's happened since then is that Wednesday is now the busiest day outside of the weekends. Now that's not all people from Orange redeeming their tickets by any means, but what it was it changed consumer public awareness about Wednesdays as a cinema going day. We've talked a lot about how the smartphone is the always there, always on device for interaction. So it's not just about advertising, it's not just about things like print or television. You can interact anywhere. And there's lots of opportunities with live events. O2, who sponsor a lot of the music venues in the UK, have done some great work using mobile phones to interact in an experiential way with their brand. They've done installations with Bluetooth, they've done things with Wi-Fi, and it's a really great chance with users to interact with the brand at a live event. And there's also sponsorship. A lot of brands will go out and spend a lot of money building an app, but actually a really good way to get an engagement is to simply sponsor someone else's. So, for example, VW did it with a game app where it was an existing game and they branded and sponsored it themselves, and it got a great response. Another one is Britain's Got Talent. So Domino's, who were the sponsor for the whole programme, also sponsored their app. And what they did was to offer for the final Saturday of the show, they offered a discount on their pizzas. And the sales on that Saturday were quite exceptional, and they were probably double what they would normally expect from that. So for many brands, rather than actually going to the effort of building an app, why not just sponsor one or sponsor something that's already there? We know that people will respond to television through their mobile, remembering that most people are sitting there with their mobile phone right next to them. If you want to get people to do something, the mobile phone is the way to do it. Very few people press the red button on their digital television. They don't really see it as a tool of interaction, but the phone is there. It's the thing that you talk to your friends with. It's now the thing that you browse. It's the thing that you download apps. So asking people to interact with that device is completely natural. This campaign was from some years ago, but it's for Colour Catcher. If you don't know it, these sheets that you put in the wash to stop the colours running. People didn't believe it worked. So what did they do? They wanted to sample. Now, what was the best way to get people to respond to those samples? It was by getting people to text. But the thing about this campaign is that it was segmented. So what they did was to use different keywords depending on the region and the time slot, and then from that they could measure the response. So once they did the first round of advertising, they were able to see which areas got the best response. For example, in the northwest of England, which got the worst response, London. And for the next round, they were able to focus their advertising spend on the places that were going to get the highest number of users, the greatest response. They expected to give out about 4,000 samples. For the first round, it was 34,000 came, and when it actually came to the second round, over 100,000 people responded because they used the right channel for that particular medium. And not only that, people found out that their product worked, sales went up 300% during the campaign, and post-campaign, 60% increase in sales. It's also about promotion. Text to win, text to voucher has been used for some years, and it's still popular in that respect. And this Ribena campaign is a good example of how vouchering can drive a lot more sales. But you can get more exciting than that. You can do a lot more interesting things. Pepsi has done quite a big tie-in with the X Factor as a way of promoting it. But this campaign on the right here is a very interesting one, and it was something that Coca-Cola did to promote Sprite, Fanta, and Dr. Pepper. What they did is they offered phone credit to people who bought their cans. And again, it's really simple. It ticks all the boxes. So you simply pull the tab of the can. There's a little code on there. You text that code to the number, and the credit is on your phone there and then. So you don't have to send away for a voucher. If you're on pay-as-you-go, that means that you can actually make a call or send a text to your mate. If you're on a subscription tariff, if you're on a monthly, then it adds on to your call allowance. And it's very effective. 250,000 people responded to this, and it's perfect for their audience. It's aimed at teenagers, and to be honest, if you're a teenager, phone credit is as good as cash. So, just to sum up, just to go over your understanding of this, think of the different ways that consumer can act with an ad that's out of home. Using an ad that you've seen recently, think about how mobile can actually be used as a response channel.